Hello and welcome to the 18th episode of Timely Topics. I'm your host, Rory McGloin, and I'm excited to be joined by my connected co-host, Jen Matthew.
Hello.
Our theme for this episode is networking. So Jen and I look to untangle the role of human connection in business and entrepreneurship. Jen and I share how a single introduction can change the course of your life and why networks are critical to supporting your personal and professional goals. But going beyond business cards and morning coffee groups, we're going to dive deeper into how you can build meaningful relationships that spark ideas, open doors, and provide sustainable support. So if you've ever wondered how some people always seem to know who to call, this timely topic is for you. And if that's not enough, stay tuned to the end of the show to hear Jen and I debate our mystery topic in our good idea or bad idea segment. Let's go.
Welcome to the Timely Topics Show, where we're bringing you all the buzz and banter of today's business conversations. Straight from our studios in downtown Hartford, with your hosts, Rory McGloin and Jennifer Matthew.
All right, Jen, so welcome home. Last time we sat down to record the podcast, you were just a few days away from heading over to Europe, particularly going to visit Ireland and Scotland. So everybody wants to know, how was your trip?
It was amazing. It was amazing. So you sent me off with quite a list of recommendations, and I felt like I needed to be there for several more weeks just to be able to get through that list. But I did check a few things off.
Nice.
And I loved the northern coast of Ireland. It was incredible, just breathtaking views. I could not stop taking pictures and videos. You just couldn't capture the essence of what you were seeing. I don't know if that ever happens to you, where you see something and you're like, this could be a painting or a picture, and you go to take a picture and you're like, no, this is not. It's not getting the essence of it. So beautiful experience. And then obviously we headed over to Scotland after, and it was just as beautiful.
Yeah, it looks like you had a great time, and I was chatting with some folks back on the island, and you had some of the best weather that maybe they've ever experienced, so they probably didn't want you to leave.
I don't know. I feel like everyone's been lying about Ireland and Scotland being rainy and cold.
Yeah.
Because it was sunny the entire time. There's not one drop of rain. Just beautiful sunshine, the perfect temperature. It was like 65 degrees the entire time.
Yeah, and you got a little bit of sun, right? We always talk about that when the sun comes out over there. You're a little bit closer to it, so it does feel like you can get a little bit more sun.
And the days are longer, so there was almost 20 hours of sunlight. So by the time the sun was setting, it was like 10:30 at night. It was amazing. And then the sun is already up when you're awake.
And you went, I know that you like to hike and get out and go for walks. You hiked Giant's Causeway, right? Up in Antrim, yeah. And how was that experience?
So cool.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things when you see nature and you see things that just exist on their own. It's the most beautiful thing, I think, than things that are man-made. But I was completely taken away.
Thinking about all the things that we talk about travel, and we're actually going to get into networking, and I think part of that is experiencing other cultures so you can bring your network to them and their network back home with you. Anything that you're bringing home with you? Anything that, you go off on your journeys, we talk about being an explorer, and maybe you take little pieces and bring back home? Anything that you're saying, I got to bring this back home with me, this thought, this idea, this food, whatever it was?
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that. So I was sharing with you that I felt like the connection to the culture felt a little deeper. I spent more time in Italy last summer, and obviously I don't speak Italian, so my connection to it felt a few steps removed. And the food was obviously amazing in Italy, so I brought a ton of that back. But being in this space where I could talk with people, I think the connections, meeting people that I'd never had the chance to meet before, hearing stories, seeing how people live and experience life. I think I mentioned to you that I just felt like people have much more care for what they own and what they possess already. It's almost like what I have now is enough. And it's less of an overconsumption culture. Again, I was there for 2 weeks, so I'm assessing that by very quickly exploring. But that was something that just hit me off the top of my head that made me say, wait a second, is there a way that I can live my life like that too, where I don't need to always buy something new?
Yeah, I think one of the best parts about going away is coming home, though, because when you come home, you're usually probably grateful for something that you missed. Usually for me, it's my bed.
Mine was my dogs.
Right.
Missed my dogs.
Right. And it is nice to come home and like bring those pieces with you. So an appreciation for your own possessions, appreciation 100%. For your own anything, right, that you've worked hard to acquire, and having that perspective. We're back home now. Summer is finally upon us here in the great state of Connecticut. We're going to be talking a little bit about some of our plans for the summer. The Hartford Taste Festival, right, just occurred just back there. And what an amazing 2-day event that was, supporting the Connecticut Food Share, all the businesses out there, seeing all the chefs doing their work down the street. A huge shout out to Jeanette and Mark and all the work that they do to put that on. It was such a great experience, and just I feel like a great kickoff here for our
Yep.
Hartford-based community to get excited that summer's finally here.
I think that those of us that don't get the chance to be in Hartford as much as you and I do, there is such incredible food here. And I know everyone always talks about going out to West Hartford or Glastonbury
Sure.
or all the
Yeah.
areas around, but Hartford has amazing food. So that was a really cool experience about walking around Taste and being able to experience all of these different foods coming together in one space and just being able to try it. Places I would have never necessarily thought to go or even knew existed.
Yeah, the diversity of food that was available and the range of restaurants that you saw, across the full spectrum was just so really exciting. So job well done to everybody involved in the Hartford
Yeah.
Taste Festival. If you missed out, put it on your calendars. You got to go next
Yeah.
year. It's a must-see event. And so we couldn't be more thrilled for everybody involved. Congratulations. And we were happy actually to be a part of the event too. We'll talk a little bit about that kind of later on, but bringing the Build Hartford program in and actually getting the students
Yeah.
to have some exposure and getting a chance to share some of the content they made. Jen, let's talk about summer plans real quickly. I think this is the time of year where people are starting to think about where are we going? What are we doing? What's on the bucket list? What do I want to get done? What do I want to achieve this summer? Have you put together your list of summer plans yet?
Yeah, so I have started to put this list together. I actually started on the plane on the way back home
Cool.
for my trip because I said this last time, when you travel, you're immediately going to what's around me. What do I need to see? How can I experience this place better? We don't do a good job about doing that in the local areas that we live because we take it for granted. We live around it. So we think, oh yeah, of course I'll go to that coffee shop at one point, or maybe I will take a stroll down the main street or this pathway. I want to explore West Hartford, my own town, as much as I can this summer. So I've got a list of some things I want to actually accomplish. They've been doing work on the Trout Brook Trail, and it's a beautiful trail that runs right near where I live. And I want to spend time walking and enjoying that with my dogs, doing farmers markets locally. So that's on my list, and checking out quite a few around the state. But I have a lot. I mean, I really do have quite a substantial list that I'm hoping to get to. So I'd love to hear some of yours.
One of the things I'm really excited about is, and we have an interview coming up with Rachel Endo, we're going to talk about the launch of a brand new fellowship program that is supported by the state, and it's called the Build Hartford Fellowship Program. And so I'm going to be working with some students, and we actually have now a event calendar that we're going to go out and try to experiencing some things. And it has some fun stuff on there that you've, thought about or done before, going to a Yard Goats game.
Yeah.
If you go on the Riverfront Recapture website, so shout out to those folks, they've got stuff going on almost like every other day, relatively, everything from 5K walks to the Sounds of Summer event, food truck festival. So we're going to go down there and check out some of those events. There are multiple farmers markets that take place in Hartford. So one of our fellows is going to be going down and checking out that. I've never been to the Hartford Jazz Festival, so I'm going to make that point to try and go. That's on July 18th this year. So I'm going to be doing that stuff. But my summer is typically occupied by two things, right? I play sports on the weekend, and the whole family's out playing Gaelic football. And if we're not out in the field and we are just hanging out by the pool, my goal is July and August on the weekends to do as little as I possibly can. Some people love to travel around in the New England area for summer. My goal is, can I maximize not just my town, but can I really maximize my home and spending some quality time? Because summers seem like they're fleeting for those of us that are getting older. And I think just trying to soak up every minute of it that you can is really my goal.
Yeah, and you do a lot of traveling throughout the year. I mean, obviously the listeners know that because I think every episode we're talking about where we've been, where we're going, and all of that. So for you, summer is always locking down and taking time to unwind, connect with your family, have people over and experience the almost like the little vacation you've created in your backyard, which I think is amazing that you have that. And we're in Connecticut, so you have a very small window to actually enjoy it. So I appreciate that you are leaning into that. There's so many people that have pools and backyards that just don't probably spend as much time as they should for the investment that they've put into having that and maintaining it.
Yeah, maybe you talked about being over in Ireland, Scotland, and kind of a part of the mentality of taking care or being excited about the possessions. I certainly didn't grow up with a pool by any means. So I think there's a piece of it that's like we have this. And really, in reality, when you look at it, you get 12 weeks. I look out my back window a lot of times and it's covered, and it's a reminder that you can't enjoy it. So just getting outside and I think enjoying what you have really should be the piece of advice, the theme that we have for all of our listeners, right? Like sometimes we build things up in our head, the big travel trips and the big expensive resorts maybe. But, the best times really probably truly are like who you're with, right? Good food and a good story. And so that's probably just as easy to do in your own backyard or just in your neighborhood barbecue as it is traveling the rest of the world.
Yeah, and I think I spent the whole month of May and maybe the beginning of June thinking about how how am I going to enjoy summer with the weather that we've been having, right? Because it's been a little bit more overcast. It's been a little bit more rainy, and thinking about, are there indoor activities? Am I going to have to do my whole bucket list of indoor activities this summer? But I think luckily the weather seems to be turning around and seems to be a little bit better.
You know, the episode is all about networking, and we love our network of listeners. So, you know, we're going to get to correspondence in a second, but before we change gears, we want to know, what are you up to this summer? We're taking a break from the podcast, so we're going to take off July and August. We're going to be working on the summer fellowship program, which is, of course, our exciting accelerator here at CCI in Hartford. What are you guys up to this summer? Let us know. When we come back, we can reconvene and update everybody on what we got up to this summer. Speaking of updates, let's go ahead and dive right into our Timely Topics correspondence segment.
All right. So, Rory, Jessica reached out to us, and I thought this was like a really, really nice email, and we segmented out just a chunk of it because she wrote a really thoughtful note.
Yeah. You want to read it, Jen?
Sure. So Jessica H. said, hello, Timely Topics. I want to reach out and say a genuine thank you for the work you do on the Timely Topics podcast. As a first-year founder of an education startup, I found your content both timely and energizing, especially in a space where there's so little being said about the real challenges and breakthroughs early-stage entrepreneurs face. Thank you again for the work you're doing. It truly matters.
I mean, that's as good as it gets right there. And
Amazing.
Congratulations to Jess on all of the success in your work. And we certainly will stay connected with you. As you guys may recall from listening to previous episodes, we did a bonus episode down at the Shaping CT event at Foxwoods Resort and Casino. Ashley reached out from the Beardsley Zoo down in Bridgeport, who was so much fun to interview. And it's so serendipitous now. I see Ashley popping up all over social media and LinkedIn now promoting Beardsley Zoo. So nice job, Ashley. She wrote and said, thank you for having me on to talk all things zoo and all things Connecticut. Rory, you made it fun, comfortable, and I do hope you take me up on the VIP zoo tour this summer. Done, no problem.
Let's go to the zoo.
We'll figure that out and we'll make that happen. We had another comment from the bonus episode from Peter, who said, we had a great time at the Shaping CT event and we learned a ton. It was great to chat with you, Jen, and I about the app called The Difference. Thank you for the feature. You're very welcome, Peter, and congrats to all the success that you're having with your application.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that bonus episode. It was so fun to have those guests on. And you know what I love even more is when our listeners actually write in and ask us a question or ask us for advice. So really good note in from Lauren F. that said, hey, Rory and Jen, I really enjoyed your recent episode on culture, and it got me thinking. One thing I'm struggling with is how to actually build the kind of culture everyone talks about. I run a small team, and while I have good intentions, it's hard to know what actions really move the needle. What are some small but meaningful things I can start doing today to create a stronger culture on the team?
Yeah, I love the question. I have only one answer that I go to, and I know that it probably almost starts to sound cliche on our podcast, but we're so committed to values.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think that for each project, I think that you have to bring your team together and ask them what value they want to apply to the project, right? So we here at CCI, we think about our relatively small team, like what are we bringing to the projects is so important to maintain the culture that we want. And so I would say, Lauren, you know, just as a simple reminder, talk to your team on a weekly basis and ask them to bring the thing that's most important to them in their life to the forefront of what they're doing. Is it time? Is it financial incentive? Is it health? Is it mental well-being? And put that at the forefront of the project. And I think what that does is it helps you to take perspective and appreciate where other people are coming from. And for me, that's the essence of improved communication.
And my advice is when you're starting a new job, they always talk about like that 90-day tour and the listening tour that you do. You go around, you talk to people both inside and outside the organization. Why does that only have to be a part of the process when you're joining something new? I think a listening tour is really important when you are just trying to hear more about what the organization can do, both with the people inside and the people outside. So we listen to our customers, hopefully, most of the time. But how much time are we really spending listening to our employees and really asking them what they need from the organization? What do they need from leadership? And especially those that maybe don't report directly to you, Lauren. So if your organization has a little bit more structure, more tiers, right, to the reporting, think about that. Talk to people that don't get the chance to have one-on-ones with you.
Yeah, and I can't help but say too, feedback's a gift. And so if you're actually struggling to put your finger on the pulse of your culture, and maybe in a situation with a small team, there are folks that might be apprehensive potentially about sharing where there might be gaps in the culture, ask folks what they experience when they work with you, when they open the product that you've sent them, when they've stepped into your office space, when you send them an email. If you have a couple trusted clients or customers, or maybe some folks that you're vendoring or working with, take some time and just say, what do you think our culture is? There's a good chance that their perception is an indicator of what some of the reality is. And if you like the answer, great. And if you don't, it does give you an opportunity to take that feedback back to the team.
Feedback's a gift.
Speaking of trying new things, our last piece of correspondence comes from Dan M. Quote, my wife and I just tried the Foundry in Hartford after listening to your interview with Chef Jeff Lazat. What a great atmosphere, incredible food. This spot is exactly what Hartford needed. Thanks, Dan, for the comment. Thanks, Jeff, for coming on the podcast. Congrats to everybody over at the Foundry. It's super fun. If you guys haven't been up there, it really makes for like a great late afternoon. The sun comes down. It's super cool. You got to go check it out.
I finally went over and checked it out. It was awesome. The food was amazing. The views and the way that they built out that whole space, beautiful.
Yeah, fantastic. Well done. We're going to hear probably more from them, I think, as things go on here in Hartford. If you've got something you want to share with us, you know where to find us. Send us an email, collaboratory@uconn.edu. You can also always find us on LinkedIn at Connecticut Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And we're still on Instagram, TikTok, and our YouTube channel is UConn CCEI.
Guess what just happened?
No way, you're kidding me.
Hey, did you hear about...
Are you sure about that? I can't believe they... Really?
It's time for Timely Topics.
In this episode's Timely Topics, we're talking about networking. In today's fast-moving, over-connected world, effective networking isn't just a luxury. It's one of the most valuable tools you have to grow your business and expand your influence. It's so much more than swapping business cards or liking a post on LinkedIn. At its core, networking is about building genuine relationships that can open doors, spark ideas, and provide critical support when it's needed most. Networking today is all about being curious, authentic, and sharing your knowledge with purpose and passion. So join us as we dive deeper into a topic that we're really excited to discuss.
All right, so let's talk about a topic that I think we enjoy and probably gives some people a little bit of nervous energy, right? Networking. And we often hear thought leadership around the concept of networking as going out to an event and networking, like just the action of going and doing this thing and then retreating back to your house and the relief of it. There's so many podcasts about if you're an introvert, or even books. If you're an introvert, how do you network? Let's take a step back from all of that and talk about networking just like as a whole, as something that as a human that's building connections with individuals, that we just need to learn more about the skills and the other components of it. At the core of networking and human connection is communication. And that is obviously the field you have been studying for many years. Can you share more about your thoughts about networking through the lens of skills and communication?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about this. I think the way you set it up was perfect because when you hear the word networking, it almost feels burdensome. It feels like a chore, like this thing that you have to do. And if we take that giant step back and we remind ourselves that connection is one of the most essential elements of human life. Like you cannot go this world alone. That really, like, let's get rid of the networking word and let's just talk about making connections, making meaningful connections that provide a support system. So when we need things, we have people to call. For me, I think one of my early lessons in the world of human connection was a lesson that my parents gave to me. And they wanted me to have this mindset that was, everybody has value if you know what to look for. And I think from an early stage, there was this ideology that when you went into an interaction, you were thinking about it as a transaction, right? What does this person have to offer me? What do I have to offer them? And can we build a relationship where we can provide mutual benefit? Maybe it was them growing up on a farm and recognizing that you're going to have to trade resources to make this thing work. And I think in today's age, we've lost some of that interdependence in society, and we don't necessarily always approach everybody as having value to us. So my first tip, right, is getting really comfortable knowing what it is that you can offer to an audience and having a really good understanding of what you might need from an audience. And I think particularly in our Western and American culture, showing up and having like this ideology of who you are and recognizing that you have something to offer people is the first step in building a good network.
Can we go one step further? How do you communicate what it is you have to offer and like practice that? I think that's the other thing people get really nervous about. I was listening to something a few weeks ago where it talks about imposter syndrome. We've talked about this before, but our fear of going out and talking to people because we're like, wait, am I this thing? Do I actually have those skills I believe? Or is that person that I'm offering this thing to actually going to think that I'm valuable? valuable. So it's really interesting that you said that. So the more that we practice and the awareness of who we are and what we can offer, and then our ability to communicate that.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I would put out there as a tip or best practice for any type of human connection, and we've been working actively on this with our team, is when you go to an event and you have relatively innocuous small talk, right? Where are you from? What's your program feature? What does your job do, right? Really going beyond that surface level information and providing what I like to talk about are breadcrumbs that are stories that point back to your core values, right? So if I have an opportunity to interact with just about anybody in a relatively meaningful way, I'm trying to work the words communication directly into that, because that's something I want associated with where I can provide value, or at least an interest area, such that if they have something going on in their mind, in their space, in their employee arena, that they think of communication, they think of you. So practicing using vernacular in your stories that you want to be synonymous with, to me, is my number one tip, especially for maybe folks with less experience going to their first networking events. Just think about, what vernacular do I want to use considerably more than others, so I become associated with that concept.
That was great advice.
So the second piece of advice, though, Jen, right, that we want to talk about is, and what everybody's thinking right now is, well, Rory, it depends on your audience. Absolutely. And so, Jen, like, one of the things I think that you've been so good at doing is developing and managing relationships around a really wide swath of individuals, particularly when it comes to CCI, right? You want to talk a little bit about your experience in terms of how do you navigate or stay nimble to pivot between different types of relationships, but actually staying core to your true values and the values and mission of the enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. One of the things that we teach entrepreneurs is thinking about the different audiences that they may need to network with, and who they need to have in their community to make them most effective. We know entrepreneurs don't go it alone, as you mentioned, nor do humans on our own. But there are various needs that we have when we're building a business. And we talk about mentorship a lot, and we'll actually talk about that in later episodes in the season. Mentorship is so important, and you need to know who is in your network and who you need to seek mentorship from. And mentors are a personal advocate, a personal support system for you as an individual, not a mentor you're going to build for your business. We say mentors, I think even CCEI, when it's really mentoring your business. It is your personal network, your personal board of advisors. You also think about the advisors that are going to actually support your business, the people that are going to give you advisory support and feedback on the business itself. They care more about putting the business in the best foot forward. Same thing with your investors. They care about the outputs of the business, less about you as an individual. So thinking about who all of those people are, those intersections of where the overlapping interests and value and support might be. And the thing that I love the most about thinking about who is in our network now and who do we need to have in our network is the strategy around finding those people and being really thoughtful about that. What's missing and what are you looking for? What do you need in 2 to 3 and 5 years from now?
Yeah, and I think that figuring out what you need is something that you have to remind yourself that everybody is doing.
Right.
Obviously, I think a lot of times what happens is when we go into these bona fide networking events, or we're told to go network, a lot of early stage networking is, what can I get out of the room?
Yeah.
Right. How many people can I hand my business card out to? How many sales leads can I get? And we go in as consumers. And we want to say, as a best practice, that is a no-no approach, right? Instead, think about, what can you give to the room? And the first thing that I love to offer as a tip or a best practice to anybody that's starting off in this space is 2 ears, 1 mouth. If you show up ready to give your listening, to give your time and your attention to people, and the vast majority of other people are in the room to share and to offer their ideas, and you become a consumer, almost instantaneously, your likability is going to go up, right? If I'm really excited about telling you all about my business and you give me an earnest ear and you give me that great level of attention and engagement, I'm really going to enjoy that interaction. I'm going to walk away thinking to myself, Jen's a really good partner for listening, right? And now all of a sudden, you've set probably the most important thing to fuel a relationship, which is kind of some level of integrity towards having interest in the thing. So 2 ears, 1 mouth. If you listen first, right, you're really giving that room an opportunity to share to you. And the networking doesn't have to be done in 1 hour or 1 day. You're trying to build a sustainable network that's going to hopefully last you over the course of a decade or two. But just because you're showing up as a listener to these networking events doesn't mean that you don't have a responsibility to also promote yourself and to share the skills that you're bringing.
Yeah. So let's stop talking about the networking events for a second,
Let's
talk
do
about
it.
networking,
Please.
because I think we're networking constantly, right? LinkedIn, we have that available to us constantly. If I think about how many times a day I actually go onto that platform, we have a tool to help us curate conversations with people and present ourselves in a certain way. How are we being really strategic with our networking, not just necessarily as a personal brand and what we're putting out there to people, but who is it we want to connect with? Do you have a list of people, like actually specific names of people, organizations, titles that you need to have access to because it will help you do this thing, like whatever that thing is? And if it's not a specific person, is it a specific organization or a title or someone? And I think that's really important to know and have that plan. And then how are you actually finding that person, or how are you connecting with them? If it's a like a moonshot idea of a celebrity, like think about someone you'd want to have on the podcast. And have you sent them a note? Have you been following them? Have you been commenting on their LinkedIn posts? Have you been resharing their content? Are you doing things that's getting enough attention to show that you care? Have you sent them an email to say, hey, really great podcast I just listened to, would love to have you on the show? Those are things like you can't just sit back and say, oh, that'd be a really great connection, and just hope that one day you show up to an event and that person's standing there. Like, that's just not a good strategy.
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of? It, and my final, tip of the 3 that we've put out here today is you have to have a call to action.
Yeah.
If you want to build meaningful relationships, one of the things that you need to do is you need to build trust. And the simplest way that you can build trust in any relationship is say you're going to do something and then do it, right? So one of the things that I like to make sure that I'm doing, whether it's in my LinkedIn profile, whether it's leaving a conversation, signing off on an email, is giving that audience member a chance to follow through on a call to action, right? So I'm looking for leads in this area. I'm really trying to find a new programmer. We're building our team. I'm looking for an office location. That should be something that you're sharing at a volume that's going to put the opportunity ahead of you. So even when we think about once we've built the network, and we're going to talk about building versus maintaining here in a second, but do you have a keen awareness of what your immediate calls to action are? Going to an event, going on LinkedIn, building a new profile, sending an email, and just saying, nice job, really enjoyed it, without a call to action, really sometimes can make it hard for the person on the other end. And we've had this happen. If you've gone to a conference or done a presentation, or you've done a great piece of work and somebody comes up and just says, nice job, you're almost looking for a, so what, how can I help you? What can I offer you? Is there synergy here? We're built around human connection. Give that person an opportunity to follow through.
I love the concept of following through, as well as we talk about and transition into maintaining relationships with people. We know when we meet with individuals that we're connected to, we sit down, we have a conversation, maybe we give them advice if it's about their business, or we connect them. That's my favorite part of networking, is making the connections for people. I love the follow through when someone sends me a note to say, hey, thank you so much for that introduction to so-and-so. I met with them last week for coffee. Here's what they're doing to be able to provide support to me, or here's how I'm supporting them. That to me means that they're taking the advice and the resources I'm providing to them. Like, my time was worthy of it. The same goes when you're giving someone advice, the follow through of, hey, thank you so much for that book recommendation. I read it. It was awesome. And I've recommended it to somebody else. Those are just little nuggets of follow through that I think make a really big difference. And that person is now more likely to want to give you advice or support in the future because you followed through with something that they told you to do.
Absolutely. And I think there's a great quote here in our notes. Time is more valuable than money. You can get more money, but you cannot get more time. So the utilization of that time, as you're talking about, and the strategic use of that time, hopefully should pay you dividends as an investment, right, as you go to continue to build that network. One of the other things that I wanted to come back to was this idea of, if you've come in with a plan and you know what your call to action is and you really want something out of somebody, right? So whether it is an in-person event or you're reaching them in a digital channel, you have to be keenly aware of where you think the strength of the relationship at is in a given place. And I say this because I think from a social norm standpoint, there are times where the ask can be too soon. And of course, there are times when the ask is far too late. And one of the things I just want to point out is that having a plan and having a call to action is really appropriate. But one of the mistakes that I often see made is if you're at an event, right, and maybe not a networking event, right, you're at an opportunity, you've come together, an opportunity for a meaningful connection. There are times where maybe somebody who's in high demand, who has a really powerful, influential network that you want, they're surrounded by people. There's a lot of people seeking their attention. And I think if you can be cognizant in that moment to respect their time or to respect their space and to just say, great presentation, I'm going to follow up with you later on and hopefully we can have a conversation. To show that respect early on, I think is going to provide you a lot more opportunity than potentially having that person wait to try to get access. And you're not going to really get a meaningful connection out of it. So remember, like, the network is not built in one day. Like, that's one piece of advice that I would have. And Jen, to your point, we might make a connection at an event because we're coming because of shared values or shared interest in a thing, but you're going to build the relationship somewhere else, right? It's not going to get built in that moment.
Right. And as you continue to think about the caliber of those people that you're connecting with, what we just mentioned, it might take more social capital or might more investment of your time up front with those individuals. So you might need to give a little bit more in the front end, knowing that that one thing that they circle around and give you is of more value than someone else. So I think it's like the balancing, as I mentioned before, of like who it is you're networking with and what you're trying to get out of that relationship, the give versus the take. Is something to consider.
Yeah, and let's talk about the seasonality of networking, okay? And one of the things that I would call all of our listeners to reflect upon right now is, are you in a phase where you are focusing on building? Maybe you've shifted jobs, you've shifted positions, maybe you have received a promotion, maybe you just launched a business or you're trying to scale and you feel as if you lack network connections to move you forward. But some of us may be in a position, Jen, where actually we feel like we have created over the last decade, let's say, a really good network. And we may no longer be in a place where we're trying to grow right now. It may be a moment to maintain. And I think it's really important that you reflect upon where you're at. You're not suggesting that you're not taking on new meaningful relationships, but it's not the sole purpose of when you're going. Maybe you're spending more time throughout the course of your week sending those follow-up notes, checking in on people, saying hello, because you want to strengthen that bond. And this is an opportunity where I always like to remind folks, and we get this great opportunity here at CCI to serve as mentors, and I've had a chance to serve as an academic mentor for so many. You can't be a great mentor without a great mentee. And I want to remind any of our listeners right now that are feeling more mentee than mentor, you have an opportunity to serve as somebody else's mentor. And that means you have an opportunity to build your network through their network, right? So if you're a recent college graduate right now and you're thinking, I'm looking for mentors, maybe turn and reflect upon yourself and saying, who can I mentor, right? Who could be my mentees? Because that allows you to dig into their networks. And as we started off in the conversation, if you have the ability to find value in everybody, you're going to build a really great network.
I also think with the breadth versus the depth of networks and connections, and you talk about the seasonality, sometimes we can get to that maintenance phase. I've got all of these people that I know that I've connected with over the last few years. How do I go a level deeper with those that I want to build that connection with, or I want to firm up a better working relationship, or there's an opportunity for collaboration with something new that I'm building, the going deep and then going wide, and then going deep and then going wide. And that's something that just happens over time. I love the quote. We've talked about it a ton of times. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. So continuing to think about how you're putting yourself out there and allow for those people to be attracted to you. If you're not necessarily going out and finding, because you're not in that mode, it still allows other people to use you as a thought leader or use you as a point of reference for the things that they're seeking. So it's almost like make yourself available for other people as they're building their network when you're in maintenance phase.
Yeah. Let's bring this home, pun intended. No matter how global the world becomes and no matter how hyper-connected we can be through all these amazing digital channels, the research still says that the strongest relationships are dictated by your geography, how close you are. And we get a chance to be a part of this here in our great community. We were using a book from Brad Feld, right, talking about startup communities. And in the book, Brad talks about the most effective networking comes from those grassroots organizations, comes from those small opportunities to build. And so kind of as a final tip here, we're thinking about, if you're new to networking or you're old to networking, it doesn't matter. The strength of your connections will almost always be primarily dictated at first by geography, and that is going to allow you to what's going to go deep before you go wide.
And we love the network here in Connecticut because of how interconnected everyone is. We've said before that we're just one step removed from somebody that could provide you with support. So reach out, ask for things, make yourself be known in this space. There's a lot of people willing to step up and help. And I can attest to that over and over again with the amount of people that have come to me in the last 8 years since I've been at CCEI to say, I want to help entrepreneurs. How can I help them? There's a lot of people out there that want that opportunity.
Yeah, and we want to hear from you. We're so glad that you're a part of our network. If you want to get involved with CCI or you want to expand and grow your network, let us know. We're happy to help.
Good idea?
Bad idea.
All right, Jen, so graduation season is upon us. And first of all, a hearty congratulations to all the recent graduates, including all of our new UConn alumni and our very own podcast research intern, Abby Robinson, and our production support intern, Rehan Ahmad. So given that all of these recent college graduates are now going to be flooding out and heading into the professional world, Jen, I thought for this episode's Good Idea or Bad Idea, we'd explore some advice that all these recent graduates are probably receiving, especially as it relates to their first postgraduate jobs. So in today's world, there's obviously a lot of pressure for graduates to find work that they love, that fulfills their professional needs, and of course, earns enough money to provide that financial autonomy that they're seeking and potentially start paying off many of those student loans. All right, so you ready for this, Jen? Here's my question. Is it a good idea or bad idea for college graduates to try and maximize their earnings immediately upon college graduation? In other words, to pursue the highest paying job and thereby set a really strong foundation for their financial future?
Great question. Very timely question. So hopefully none of our people that are in finance, like the time value of money, are listening to this concept that I'm about to say, which is I don't think the dollars matter right now for a graduate. And that being said, I would highly suggest taking a job, an internship, an opportunity that pays less if it's going to give you more opportunities for connections, for networks, the opportunity to grow and expand. If you get a job that, yes, it pays you well and you're really excited because of you get to tell your friends what your first paycheck is outside of college, and it might be fun the first few paychecks as you see it enter your account and you're like, wow, I'm a real person. If it's not bringing you that joy, that connection, like helping you get to that next level, then what are we doing? I think it's a bad idea to seek a job just for the financial benefits, especially early on when you maybe don't have the huge financial burdens of mortgage, family, all kinds of things.
Listeners, we have our first ever official answer from Jen on a Good Idea, Bad Idea segment. And to be clear,
I think I've had a few others before.
We'll have to, Lucas, maybe
Yeah,
we can go back and we can
and
check the
check
tape on that. Jen, I wholeheartedly agree with you. However, I do want to add one tidbit of information or at least advice. I think those early days, if you're having the ability to be in your young 20s and pursue something that's going to have the ability to maximize your professional skill set, I'm all in on that. I will say, though, right, that there does become sometimes a time value money connection where I think if you're not looking to maximize some of your earnings at the midpoint of your 20s postgraduate, it can have a potential limiting effect, especially if you're not thinking entrepreneurial, if you're going and working for an organization or you're planning to be an employee for the considerable future. There are, right, some literatures out there that would say maximizing your earnings early on can really set you up for higher growth potential later on in life. So just a tidbit out there for any of our recent graduates. In an ideal world, you find something that you love that pays you really, really well. But we have to say that doesn't really often always come along as often as you might like. Any other tips you've got for our recent graduates, Jen, before we sign off for the summer?
Do everything with intention.
There you go. That's it. That's as good as it gets. Folks, we're going to sign off for the summer. We really hope that you get out there and enjoy and explore all of the local goods around your area. We, of course, are so grateful for you tuning in all spring. And please be sure to share this episode or any previous episodes with your friends or drop us an idea for a future episode.
And don't forget, we produce our show right here in the Collaboratory studio at CCEI in the heart of downtown Hartford.
That's it. Until next time, we wish you good luck in all of your endeavors.